Hello, lovely people. Hope you're all well and welcome back to another episode of MMA from London to LA. My name is Callum and I'm joined by Double C Colin Crandall. Hope you're well, people. Don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe to Hannibal TV. And we are back with another one. UFC Singapore is officially come and gone. And what an event it was.
It was
UFC went
indeed.
to Asia and put on an absolute spectacle. And the main event was a special spectacle to behold, and it will have a lot of us speaking for decades on end because of the ramifications that have come from that fight. We are
Indeed.
going to start. Sorry, Colin.
I was going to say indeed. I was going to say, speaking of spectacles, were you watching the fight in your spectacles, or what was the last? Because in Great Britain, they used to call these spectacles.
They used to have monocles, didn't they?
Yes, absolutely. But fortunately for you, you're young enough. You don't need to wear any spectacles.
Touch wood. Not yet, no. But if I continue to work behind the camera and with a computer, it might hit me one day.
I hear you. Hopefully not for a little while.
Hopefully. Well, let's get into the card, though. The main card. Started off with Junior Taffa versus Parker Porter. Another Taffa brother has knocked out Parker Porter, both of which have been in the first round. Any surprises here, or is this just what you expected?
It is what I expected, although I thought Parker might give him a little bit of trouble. His Junior Taffa's brother, Justin, is the more experienced fighter, and so you saw that knockout perhaps coming. But Taffa, the younger Junior, you thought could perhaps have a bit of a trouble with the portly Parker Porter, as you might say. But he did not, and so the tongue twister then commences. Peter Piper picked a peck of Parker Porters, and how many Parker Porters did the Taffa family pick to knock out? So that's my new twist on the Peter Piper picked a peck of peppers. Anyway, as we continue on my Mad Dog and Englishman journey, of course, I play the Mad Dog. Callum here, of course, is the Englishman too. To answer your question, thank you. The long and short, this was as expected, but even more impressive for Junior Taffa, in my opinion.
Fair enough. Parker Porter, where do you think he goes from here?
I think that he's a tough guy. He can beat me in a fight. That much I can say.
But smash me as well.
Yeah, it is. I'm not sure where that gets him, but I think that he's got to go back to the drawing board. It's so hard to say. I mean, and the heavyweight division when he got in just a couple of years ago in the UFC was not as stacked as it is now. And so I think he was able to get some contenders that were kind of, mid, as they say now. At least I'm hearing the young people say, insults always say, "Oh, you're just mid," And so he was beating guys who were kind of mid level, in other words. But now the guys are tougher, so he's in a bit of trouble. I don't know if he can go down in weight. You would think so, but then again, some of these guys that are a bit fleshy and that are not really physique guys, not really great body guys, everyone thinks, well, of course they can go down in weight, but sometimes they can't. Sometimes they're just very thicker, guys, and have been this weight since they were like 15 or 16 years old. And so the thought of going down, I think sometimes the fighters that can come down in weight perhaps had just gotten a bit bigger, maybe in their late 20s. Were at one point in like a 205 division, whereas some of these guys that haven't been to 105 pounds since they were like 12 years old or 13 years old. Right, it's going to be, they're not really wanting to experiment with that. So I fear that may be the case. So I don't know where he goes, but I think he may be cut here, and where he may be forced to go is a different organization, although I don't hope anyone loses their job.
Yeah, of course.
I have nothing against Porter. That's the long and the short of it.
Yeah, I mean, even you mentioning that, I remember Tom Aspinall speaking about this, because people were starting to say Tom Aspinall, he's not the most ripped heavyweight. And they were saying, oh, maybe Tom Aspinall could get down to 205. And he literally spoke to his doctor and he says, I think his doctor said to him, the absolute lowest he could go was maybe something like 220 pounds. And he said anything lower than that is risking his life. And sometimes you look at people and you don't realize bone density has a lot to do with weight as well. Yeah. Someone's height has a lot to do with weight. So you can look at someone physically and think, oh, that person could shed a lot of weight and get down to that. But it doesn't always work like that. And you're right, he may be one of those characters whereby he just can't shift as much weight as he looks like he can shift. And even if he did, and another thing people forget, because of the training they do, they're not just going to lose that weight. They're going to turn that extra weight into muscle, and muscle's just as heavy. So I don't know. I hope he doesn't lose his job, but he does need to get back in the win column. Maybe he does that without fighting a Taffa brother. So we'll see what happens next with Park.
Indeed, the portly gentleman serving you your fish and chips next week outside of London might beat him, but I hope not.
Right, the next fight on the card, in my opinion, could and maybe should have headlined a fight night card. I think this fight was probably one of the most overlooked fights of the year so far. And the reason I say that is because you're looking at two of the best in a division. And whereby, in my opinion, going into the fight, this was a number one contenders match. And I'm talking about Blanchard versus Taila Santos. Taila Santos' last fight was against Valentina Shoshenkos, where many people thought she had won the fight, and many people were projecting that she would have won the fight had it not been for an unfortunate clash of heads. Erin Blanchard's just been on a tear. She stopped Molly McCann, she stopped Jessica Andrade, and she is now seen as one of the biggest threats in the 125 division. So for these two to be on the second fight of the night, I mean, not even higher up the card, it was a mind-boggling one for me. And I think the UFC may have potentially dropped the ball a little bit on this one. Nonetheless, though, it did go 3 rounds, and Blanchard did get the win, and a massive win. And look, close fight, but I don't think anyone, or I've not seen anyone really complain about the actual result. What did you think of the fight? And do you think Blanchard is now next for the title shot?
I think so. And to coin the phrase you just used, which is quite common in England, she's got a massive wrestling skills, a massive head, and a massive ego to go all together into what is Erin Blanchfield. And I felt that her walnuts would be blanched in this matchup. And I thought that my girl from Brazil, Taila Santos, would be the one doing the blanching. Instead, the woman that I call Blanche blanched the Brazilian Taila Santos. Taila Santos. Anyway, whichever. I thought Santos looked great. Clearly won the first round. It was looking very bad for Erin. Santos was shutting down the takedowns like they were nothing, and was busting her up. Second round, she made a mathematical error, so to speak, in that she kind of went for a takedown, and it looked like she was going to try to go for a lateral throw in wrestling, but she ended up right on her back. And the top pressure and the balance of Blanchfield is so good, she stayed on her back. And then it seemed like Taila did start to gas out a bit in that second round, and then gassed out tremendously in the third round, allowing Blanchfield to win. Almost everyone that I know also felt that if Santos had not gassed out, and if she would have not made that error and landed on her back, that she probably would have won, and quite clearly. So I think Santos will be back. I think Blanchfield dodged a bullet, not literally, but figuratively, in a great large way there, because she was getting the snot beat out of her in the first round. So I think, though, great fight. I think, though, that Blanche is definitely up next. Santos has got to come back and be a little more focused. Apparently she had personal issues going. She left her own training camp and financial problems and other stuff. And she looked just basically like she was focused, but her heart wasn't completely in it. At least it appeared that way to me.
I hear that. Erin Blanchfield just turned 24 years old. Turned 24 in May. You look at Valentina, 35. Grasso, 30. Taila Santos, 30. Blanchfield now, it seems as though she's in the driving seat. And unless there's a close fight between Shevchenko and Grasso, and maybe you do a trilogy match, or, hear me out, Wei Lee decides to go up and fight for the 25-pound belt if Valentina wins comfortably and and in spectacular fashion. Blanchfield is next for the title shot. At 24 years old, when you look at the division behind her and the fact that some of these women are 30 and above, could she now be on the cusp of potentially winning the championship and going on a dominant run for a long time, in your opinion?
She could really be. I predict that's not going to happen. I predict that won't happen. But
okay,
but
as in you predict she won't win it or won't go on a dominant run?
Both. She won't win.
Oh
it.
wow, that's a bold shout.
Yes. But she's got talent. But I think it's not going to. I think she's going to go off. She's going to be taken off course with a loss in her very next fight, regardless of who it's against. So, but I think she's tough, and I think she does have a great future. She's very young, but she's going to come up with against a problem in her next fight, whether it be Grasso or Shoshenkos. It should be one of them. And but she's got a lot of talent at her age. Yeah, she's should she stay on course, she could be someone that could end up being a champion at some point. But for me, that would be many years from now.
Okay, that's throwing me a bit of a curveball because I actually think she's the heir to the throne. I think as much as Shevchenko, in my opinion, is probably, well, she's not probably, she's on the Mount Rushmore of women's MMA, in my opinion. In that Grasso fight, I did see, well, no, from the Talia Santos fight, I saw signs of her slowing down a little bit, and the Grasso fight slowing down a little bit more, getting hit more than she ever usually gets hit. And the wrestling as well. Look, Valentina is excellent at offensive wrestling, but even in the Santos fight, you saw there were times where Santos was able to out scramble her or switch position, and I think Blanchfield could do that to her. Grasso's a bit of a different puzzle to solve because her boxing's so crisp and she has got really good jiu-jitsu. I do think Blanchfield within the next 2 years will be champion though. I don't know why. There's something in her. She's very stoic, but she has a very barbaric streak in her, which I think you need as a champion. And at her age, with the fact of, I can't think of the top of my head of any other flyweights who are around her age at her skill level, I think she could go on and do some special things. Again, I think Talia Santos still has a massive future. And look, if Shoshenko loses and stays at 25, I think there's a rematch there because they both coming off losses. I think there's a rematch there to settle the score and then potentially project one of those two back up the rankings again and into a title frame. So I'll be interested to see where that goes.
Indeed.
Next fight.
Sorry. I was going to say also, I think Manon Fiore is in the picture, and I think also Karine Silva is good before. So that what would be so interesting to me would be Blanchfield and Karine Silva, and because Karine is so dangerous with those submissions. Like, I would bet you her training would be to catch Blanchfield off a transition or even at a takedown and immediately start throwing up submissions. And that would be really interesting because that would be the first person really to do that to Blanchfield. And so I think she's got some girls that can beat her, but she's got tremendous potential. I think I would be the outlier as far as MMA media and handicappers that doesn't think she's going to make it because it sure looks like she is. So you're with the great majority. Anyway, as you were saying, continuing on.
Yes, on to the next fight, which was a barn burner. Nakamura versus Garcia. Geez, how many times did Garcia find himself in tricky situations, but he just fought through? What a tough man. But Nakamura does look like a really, really fun and exciting fighter. And I'm excited to see both of these guys fight again, obviously. But Nakamura, it was his show. And still undefeated, 8-0 he moves to now.
Absolutely, I was impressed. I did predict Fernie would do quite well, and even though he didn't really win a round, he was in that fight and he made it very tough. So I think Fernie will be back, possibly beating his next opponent. Rinya Nakamura is definitely knocking Amora on the door. So, and we'll have to let him in at some point. Seems like a good guy. His English is pretty good. Humble guy, great wrestler, dynamic, strong fighter, undefeated. So yeah, great fighter representing Japan, and both of them look quite good. Very exciting fight. They still should have been lower on the card than the Blanchfield Santos, but at least it was a very exciting fight, so you can't hate on it that much.
Yeah, completely agree. The next fight, Giga Chikadze versus Alex Caceres. If I'm not mistaken, this is Giga's first fight since the Calvin Kattar fight, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And Alex Caceres has been on a good little win streak as well. However, Chikadze shut him down completely and won all 3 rounds. Again, it wasn't a sustained beating or a whitewash, but it was a clear 3-0 fight, in my opinion. And do you think this gives Chikadze some injection back into that 45-pound division now?
I think it does, but I think we could have possibly given 1 round to Caceres, but still, nevertheless, one thing I knew in that fight is it wouldn't be this easy walkover for Giga. I did pick Giga to win, but Caceres is a very tough guy. I heard some people saying Giga's striking is on another level than Caceres. Blah blah blah, whatever. No, it didn't look like it. Caceres was right in that fight. He came up a bit short as the older fighter. I think possibly Caceres might have done better 3-4 years ago, other than when he's 35 years old. But he looked really good. Just was a bit short. Got caught with a bit harder strikes by the more technical fighter. But Caceres looked, way better than a lot of people thought. And as a 3-1 underdog or whatever he was, maybe he wasn't that big a dog, I forgot, but he handled himself quite well. Yeah, Giga looked pretty good coming back, and good guy, nice guy, and I've interviewed him a couple times before, and both are really good guys. Talked to both of them, and yeah, Giga looks good. He looked like perhaps a bit rusty there, and I think that it was a solid victory.
Definitely agree. It'd be very interesting to see who he's matched up with next. The co-main event was a rematch from a couple of years back. Anthony Lionheart Smith versus Ryan Superman Spann. Different fight, same outcome though, same result.
Yes, indeed.
The old man, as they call him, was able to find a kryptonite for Superman and got the win over Ryan. How did you think the fight went? And you know what? Kudos to Anthony Smith as well, because his eye looked absolutely done, and he still fought for it. It's veteran and very smart fight IQ, and deserved the win, in my opinion.
Yep, absolutely. To quote the great 1960s, 70s, and 80s Saturday afternoon sports show in the United States, spanning the globe, to bring you the constant variety of sports and entertainment with Ryan Spann, with the amazing wingspan, and Anthony Smith with a great wingspan as well. So there's all kinds of spanning going on here, and the very close fight. I could have seen it going either way. I think Spann was expecting the victory from the damage he did, and I wouldn't have been surprised. In all honesty, I feel like that was a draw, and I feel like either man could have won. Unfortunate for Spann, because he really needed that win. But then, of course, he's the younger man by a few years, so Lionheart really needed that win as well. It's interesting, if you notice, the haters come out whenever anyone loses, right? And what I thought was odd was this fight could easily have gone to Spann and no one would have complained. I don't even think Anthony Smith could have complained. But yet, as soon as Spann gets the loss, then I see people putting on the board, Spann should have probably won that fight, but he's the dumbest guy ever. His strategy was the worst. He couldn't capitalize on this. He didn't do what, and I don't know about that. I mean, the bottom line is he knew that Anthony Smith was the better grappler, the better jiu-jitsu guy, right? So I think a lot of people were thinking he should have gone to the ground with him and tried to finish him off. And then that puts you in danger. And he had been submitted by this opponent only a few years ago. So I think strategically it made sense not to maybe mess around or mess about, as you guys would say, on the ground. So I don't think he fought the stupidest fight ever. Could he have maybe tried to finish him, maybe more? I mean, that's one of the interesting things, and I think these veterans like Smith have a bit of this respect factor when it comes to a certain skill set they possess that is pretty polished. his jiu-jitsu is good. He's got, what, 33 wins out of 37, 33 finishes out of 37 victories, and like 20 of them are submissions, or 25.
Yeah.
So I think, in this situation, your reputation can dictate what your opponent does. And I think, had he not had that reputation, I think Spann would have gone to the ground with him and tried to finish him off. But I think because of the fact he's that tricky, he's very composed, so experienced with over 50 fights, that he didn't. But nevertheless, close, good fight. Spann moves to 21-9 now, almost double-digit losses. Anthony Smith does have double-digit losses at 18, but he's got 37 wins. Wow, 55 fights.
Crazy.
A lot of mileage on that guy.
Crazy activity.
It really is, but he's a very good commentator. It is what it is. They both produced a very good fight. Great damage put on by Ryan Spann, and great resiliency by Lion
Yeah, I'll say it'll be very interesting to see what happens next with Anthony Smith, because there's been a little bit of a back and forth between him and Alex Pereira, but Pereira, if I'm not mistaken, will fight for the title, the vacant title, against Jiri Prochazka. So I think Smith, you could maybe go Smith and Blachowicz, maybe. I think that could be a decent fight.
Yes, perhaps they could have that at the Wembley Arena during a football game in the halftime, and we could be served some tea and crumpets. What the hell I'm saying? Hope my British fans here appreciate that.
No, they'll be fine. They'll be fine. But yeah, very good co-main event, and then on to the fight that everyone was waiting for: the Korean Zombie versus Max Blessed Holloway. The fight lasted 3 rounds. And boy, was it a good fight. Boy, it was a really good fight. And the old adage says, if you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Korean Zombie went for it in that 3rd round. Bit down on the mouthpiece. He drew for the sword, but it was Max who got the final blow in, and a walk-off KO for Blessed Holloway's first walk-off KO in God knows how long. And what's ironic is, before the fight, Korean Zombie said that Max wasn't really a power puncher, but speed and timing, accuracy, you don't have to be the most powerful man in the room if you've got all those things going for you. And Max Bless Holloway, again, another contender. And he's now in a position where, since Conor McGregor, if I'm not mistaken, the only person at 145 that's beaten Max Holloway is Volkanovski, who is the champion. Max is in a crazy situation, but even though we could speak about Max all day, we have to pay respect to the man who retired at the end of that fight. One of the best martial artists we've seen in 145 division. In my opinion, probably the best Asian fighter we've seen. And that is a Korean Zombie. What a career. That UFC strap eluded him. You could argue he lost his best years to serving in the military back in his home country. But what an honor it has been to watch the Korean Zombie fight for the years he's fought, whether it be WEC or the UFC. Just brilliant to watch. What's your favorite, or what was your favorite moment of the Korean Zombie's career, Colin?
Well, I'd have to say when he got that twister, first ever twister, was absolutely amazing. Some of the wins in the WEC were amazing. That fight with Yair Rodriguez, although he lost that fight, but it was just such an amazing fight.
He was winning that fight as well. That's what was crazy. He's winning.
Yeah, absolutely. Just so many great fights. I think we all were aware how this fight would turn out, but I don't think a lot of us believed that Zombie would do this well. I would say this: it's too bad this fight didn't happen 5 years ago, because Zombie's chin was more solid then. He was younger. No one had really found the sweet spot on him. And that would have been really interesting to see. But an aging Zombie was up against Max Holloway. I tell you what, though, huge respect to him when he got rocked and got caught in that Darce choke and did not tap. Because even though the grip may not have been that, tight, it was still a slow choke that he remained in for like a solid minute and a half or 2 minutes. and to be rocked and then locked in something where your air is cut off, but he just kept gator walking out of it to the side. Just what a warrior. You know, he did what he had to do, but he also went out on his shield, like you said. He could have tried to stay away. He could have been really cautious, but then possibly you would have seen a more aggressive Max Holloway really put a sustained beating on him.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have made much sense because Holloway had the reach and the youth and the size. And so Zombie did what he had to do. He really went for it. And he was hitting Max. He really was. Inevitably, though, with this strategy, this was going to happen. You can't, unless you're Volk, you can't really go after Max like that, you know. But he did. He just went on a shield. A great finish of the video of his career. Very emotional. Great Asian warrior. Great Korean warrior. Huge respect to the Korean Zombie. From now on, I have to call myself the American Zombie, and you can be the British Zombie.
I'm down for that. Phenomenal career. And you're right. You can't do that with Max. We've seen him do that with Ricardo Lamas. It didn't end well for Lamas. We've seen him do that with Arnold Allen. Didn't end well for Arnold Allen. The only person that is beating him is Volk. I'm going to ask a question that I probably know the answer to, but I think it's only right I ask it before we move on to the Paris card. Could Max get another title shot at Volk?
I was hoping this answer could involve fish and chips, but nevertheless, it doesn't. But
if you say yes, then we could watch the fight while eating some fish and chips.
There we go. I like it. That might be what we do. I'd love to, especially some of that great fish and chips in England, which I've never had before. I've got to get over there.
One day, definitely.
I would love to. I really would. Wow. The answer, I guess, would have to be yes, because Max, well, before Max, then Max beat Yair, but Max beat Yair before Yair was. I mean, Yair was. He was Yair when Max beat him. Yair wasn't really green. He pretty much had become who he was, but it was a pretty competitive fight. And I think even though Yair lost fairly, very convincingly to Volk, they might want to do that fight again. Again. I mean, it's a very odd situation because usually when a former champion loses so many times to the current champion in the last worse than ever, normally that former champion does not end up beating everyone else. It's a bit of an unusual situation in that. But then look at he's fought Volk 3 times or 4.
3. The first one was clearly Volk. The second one, I actually scored it for Max.
Yeah.
And the third one was just it was a clinic. It was a clinic.
Yeah. So in all honesty, the first he did lose, but he was certainly in it. It was competitive. The second one, a lot of us felt he won. But then the third one, he just got the break speed off him by Volk. Yeah. It's what though? I mean, in all honesty, it has to be whoever is in the position that has the most merit should indeed get the title shot. But since he's fought him so often, and UFC is probably going to feel people don't care about that fight. I mean, I think it's unfortunate Arnold Allen lost to him, because then Arnold Allen would have been the British-Australian matchup a lot of people would love. But I mean, who else is in the who's in the picture? Oh, who's in the picture is Ilia Topuria.
Yeah, well, Ilya gets the next title shot.
Yeah. So, but after that,
I don't see Ilya beating Volk though. I don't see it.
I don't either. But after that, or as you gents would say, after that, you would have. Let me see. Let me look up here. Movsar Evloev is
nah.
No, you don't like it. Okay. And then I guess after coming back from a while, but then I was going to say Bryce Mitchell, but he has to get a win because he looked terrible against Topuria. Yeah, like in all honesty,
It's slim pickings, isn't it? I mean,
yeah,
or
yeah,
maybe do the. I mean, you can't even really sell an Ortega rematch for Max at the moment because he beat I mean, you could suppose because Ortega's been out, and you can argue that Ortega's a different fighter now to when Max first fought him. I, it's very different. I mean, I've got a few theories about Max. If he's not going to get a title shot, put him in fun fights at 55.
yes,
He might be a bit undersized, but I mean, if there's one thing we know about Max, he's going to fight until the end.
indeed.
Gaethje, I wouldn't mind seeing that fight. Him versus Chandler, the rematch with him and Oliveira.
Yep.
We never got to see that after the unfortunate way the first fight ended.
Yes,
But
maybe.
he might be small for 55.
Yeah, indeed. It'll be interesting to see, but let's just say if he did not want to go to 55, right? If and when I think Volk beats Topuria, then Volk would be really pretty much forced to either fight Max or to go to 155. Because if Volk beats Topuria, you can't give it to Yair again because he beat him convincingly. You can't give him it to Arnold.
I think if Volk loses, I think Volk gets an immediate rematch though.
Oh yeah, for sure. But if Volk wins, then and if Volk wins, he deserves to get
Islam or
Islam again or Charles. And if he doesn't, then it's got to be Max. And but they probably don't want to make that fight. So interesting, definitely. I think though that so I think it indeed may happen. I really do. I think it indeed may happen. But I think it necessarily people wouldn't be that excited about it. Volk would be a huge favorite. It'd be ironic if Max then came back and won. But man, we'll have to see. Interesting talk. So interesting.
I know it's crazy, and I don't mind if people were to comment and say I'm talking nonsense. I still believe Max is the only one at 45 that can beat Volk, though.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that that Movsar Evloev, although undefeated, doesn't seem like he's that extremely talented, right? And then unless Yair, I don't know, Yair just didn't even come close. And Arnold Allen, you know, perhaps he would match up with Volk for better than with
he
Max.
could. Yeah, he could match up with Volk quite well.
And then it would be the British-Australian matchup, which is interesting. I'm sure there have been some great British versus Australian matchups in boxing, but I can't think of too many in the UFC. Right? There's
I think it was Hatton Costazoo. Was Costazoo Australian?
Yes. That's right. That is right. That was right, and that was in boxing, like I said.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is true, and but I guess you guys are friendly countries, although those guys were the convicts. I remember back in the day. This is probably when you were a kid. They were still saying convicts. They were calling the Australians convicts. That's back when they were calling where I live. You guys would call it the colonies. That goes way back. You guys don't say either of those things, probably.
No.
No. Anyway, mate. But yeah, interesting to see. So that indeed was the main event, and a lot of interesting things on that card. But it is what it is. Shall we move on to the fight night?
Let's do it. So let's look at the Paris card, which comes around this weekend, and headlining is obviously the Parisian Cyril Gane, but we also got again another great flyweight fight, which could have title implications as well. But we'll start with the main card. You may have to help me here because some of these fighters I don't know if I'm going to be completely transparent. Yanis Gomori versus Kerlan Longar.
Okay, let me see. Let's take a look here, and that would be the first fight on the main card. Apparently, Yanis Gomori Cowlin, like Colin. That's like the weirdest way to spell, but I think that would be a Gaelic spelling. I think perhaps, maybe I'm wrong, but Cowlin Loughran is indeed from Ireland. There we go. The Don, kind of an unusual looking bloke, as you guys would say.
Undefeated.
Undefeated, 8-0 with 5 finishes out of Tyrone, Ireland. Do you know, would that be the Republic of Ireland or Northern?
I have no idea. No idea if I'm going to be honest.
No
Where did it say it's from?
Tyrone, Ireland.
No idea, if I'm going to be honest.
No problem. I have a feeling it would be the Republic of Ireland.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, wow, he's a finisher. Only one fight has gone the distance, and then he has 5 KOs and 2 submissions. Only 27 years old, a bit of a shorter fighter, 5'6" at 135 pounds.
Okay.
And as an amateur, wow, he had more amateur fights indeed. As an amateur, he was 8-2, and both of his losses were by decision. He's had some amateur fights in Cage Warriors, and then he had several pro fights in the Cage Warriors. In fact, he had 4 pro fights in the Cage Warriors, and all 4 he won by second round stoppage. Isn't that interesting? All 4 of them, and it was all by TKO.
Wow.
But he's beat a bunch of people that no one's heard of, at least on this side of the pond, as they say. You mates may have heard of it if you're watching Cage Warriors. He beat Dylan Hazan, Luke Shanks, Festus, Horlu, and Bakhtiar Ori Kale. Anyway, big question mark. Who knows what this guy has? But he's got a lot of hair in his head, so he's got that. Whatever that'll do. Nevertheless, his opponent Yanis Gemori, out of Lyon, France.
Okay.
This card, right? And so he will be the local favorite there.
Yeah.
He's got a little bit of the sideburns that make him look a bit like Wolverine from Canada, right? And he is 28 years old, young man as well. 5'9", so he's got the decided height advantage. He's 12-1 with 7 finishes, so a great record as well. Not quite the finisher, but a good finisher in his own right. He's been fighting for the Brave organization in Europe, which is a very good organization.
Yeah, that is.
Yep. And he is on a 9-fight win streak. And his last loss was, wow, look at how far back that goes. Okay, here's something that's a bit interesting. He's 28 years old. His first UFC fight was 9 years ago when he was 19. And then he had 3 fights in 2014, 1 in 2015, 1 in 2016, only 2 fights 2017, 1 fight in 2018, and then took a year and a half off. And had 1 fight in 2020, 2 fights in 2021, 1 in 2022, and 1 in June. So, not a lot of activity.
Yeah, not very active.
Yeah, he's only got 13 fights out of 9 years as a professional fighter. So, but the interesting thing is this is going to be the quickest turnaround. This is going to be the quickest turnaround he's had. June, July, August. It'll be
very quick turnaround.
Less than 3 months, around 2 months and 2 weeks. I have no way of knowing who's going to win this fight. I have a feel. Well, you know what? Matchmaking usually sets up the locals to have a bit of a better chance to win.
Yeah.
And so I would imagine that this guy Yanis is probably for real, and the Irishman may not quite be that for real. Odds makers on this card have this not even listed on the board. That can't be the case. Calvin, yes. Wow, they've got the Irishman 3-1 favorite.
Oh wow,
that is strange. So they're feeling like the hometown. The odds makers feel that this is indeed not set in favor of the local Frenchman. I don't know. You know what? I would not even think of laying 3-1 odds to bet on the Irishman against the Frenchman in France. I would not. Could he win? Could he crush him? Maybe. But he's the shorter guy. Gemori is 28, just beginning his prime. Lawford 27, not even there. Lawford looks like a tough guy, but the audience is going to be screaming like crazy for Gemori. But yeah, I have no idea what he's going to. We'll learn something. We'll definitely.
We will.
Yeah, about both of these gents.
I'm not going to hazard a guess. I'm going to look at another fight on the card. I'm going to skip a couple.
Yes.
We spoke about flyweight, women's flyweight, and Erin Blanchard. And you rightly mentioned Maino Fiore.
Yes.
And she's going to be going up against someone who's not a natural flyweight. However, is one of the biggest stars in all of MMA, not just women's MMA.
Yes.
Rose Namajunas.
Yes.
Now, I know what I said about Erin Blanchfield. And if I'm not mistaken, Rose and Valentina are very good friends. Hence why Rose has never really clamored for that fight with Valentina when she was the champion at 115. However, it seems as though Valentina, in my opinion, especially with no Nunes around now, I think it may be 1 or 2 more fights for Valentina, and I think she'll call it a day. Thug Rose moving up to 125 is extremely interesting.
It is.
And I still think she can make 115, but that's a conversation for another day. Maino Fiore, what a fight to come into this division to fight, though. 2 fantastic fighters. Which way do you see this going, and what implications do you think it has for this division?
2 very good questions. As someone once said in a movie, astute observation. But yes, well, this is an interesting matchup. Ramifications are quite a few because Manon Fiore is right there in the probably top 5 now, I would think, if not number 6. Probably she should be top 5. Rose has not proven anything as a flyweight, but is a great champion, and at 31 is certainly not old. She did lose that split to Carla Esparza, which was really close. A lot of people thought she won.
So I thought she won.
Yeah, so technically, I think so. Technically, she'd be coming off a 4-fight win streak, but it will have been over a year out of action. She did a grappling match on very short notice against a larger Jillian Robertson and got taken down and submitted. But it doesn't matter. This is not BJJ. It's MMA, and Fiore is not a jiu-jitsu black belt. So Fiore is 5'7", and she's like kind of a taller 5'7". She could be closer to 5'8". Rose is 5'5", and legitimately I think just 5'5". So definitely going to be a length and a size advantage for Fiore. You know what's strange to me, and I shouldn't say strange, but were I the Namajunas camp, first of all, this is quite a big challenge and a
massive challenge,
and a highly rated contender to make it your first fight in a new weight class. Yeah. You know, many would say that's ill-advised. Like, why would you do that? But and not only that, but to agree to fight this person in their home country, I mean, it's a bit bizarre to me. You know, it's almost, as you guys would say, either she has all the confidence in the world, and we're going to see an amazing Rose Namajunas, or she doesn't care and she's not sure, and she doesn't, you know, almost like this might be a last hurrah for Rose. Because Rose has, you know, I think it's interesting. I think Rose has been very grateful for the opportunity and the lifestyle this career has afforded her. But I also think that the stress that it causes and she's a very unique person. I don't think that like what do you call her? Amanda Nunes loved fighting. Like, she was just a fighting chick. She's out of Brazil, and a lot of these girls that get into fighting out of Brazil, they're all in. They love it. Their pride and joy is to beat up another person.
Yeah.
And I don't get that Rose Namajunas has ever really relished this fighting. And in fact, I think part of her doesn't really even like it. You know, but it does indeed cause stress for her. But it also does indeed pay her bills.
Yeah.
You know, if she looks good and strong, I would hope maybe she's practiced her wrestling a bit. That's been one of the cracks on Rose, is that she's a very good grappler and jiu-jitsu person, but not much of a wrestler. And she's been kind of tall and lanky, but now she won't really be tall and lanky. She'll be a shorter fighter now. Yeah, a bit of a shorter fighter, and maybe she'll come in thick. I tell you, if she can come in and wrestle and get this fight to the ground, she can certainly win this fight. If she can't, she still may be able to hang in there, but more than likely not. So what I think the ramifications of are for this is, I think the winner of this would be behind Aaron Blanchfield, but perhaps just behind Aaron.
Or do they fight each other?
Or they fight Aaron, right? Yes, brilliant, exactly. So that's what it is. Either depending on how quickly how much damage the winner of Shevchenko and Grasso take in the rematch. I think the Blanchfield camp would rather just go straight to the title shot. And you know what? They may be presented with that offer. However, at 24, why are you in a rush, right? But then on the flip side of it is, let me ask you this. If you were a fighter in Aaron Blanchfield's position, you were quite young, and you had to choose where you were going to lose, and I know it's a weird thought, so I'm not saying that would be your mindset.
Yeah.
If you had two choices, you were either going to lose in a title fight against the champ or lose in a title eliminator fight, would you prefer one over the other, do you think?
I'd rather lose a championship fight, because then your ranking isn't affected as much as losing against a #1 contender.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I also get you, because losing your first title shot, it's very difficult to potentially get a second title shot, or it doesn't happen as quickly. So let's say she lost to the winner of Rose and Fiore, but then she went on a 2-fight win streak. You could argue she gets a title shot. However, if she gets a title shot and she loses, she might have to go on a 3 or 4 fight win streak to get that rematch or for another chance for the gold. It's a tough one. Yeah, I'd go for the belt though. I would go for the belt.
Yeah, and you know what I think also? It may also depend on the opponent. If Rose comes in good as a wrestler and looking good as a striker, and comes in and takes a few of Menon's best shots, doesn't bother her. She's throwing, she's exchanging. She comes in and shoots for a takedown and submits Fiore. If that's the case, although she will have looked good, I think that Aaron would be happy to fight Rose.
Yeah.
However, if Menon just pieces her up, I think Menon would be a scary fight for Aaron, because what Aaron was doing to Santos and Santos wasn't as this tall, I think. Menon slightly taller. I think that that Santos was beating the brakes off of Aaron, but she just lost her focus and she gassed. Menon has an amazing gas tank.
Yeah.
And Menon is a more polished striker. I don't think her ground game is nowhere near Santos. But I think Fiore would be the more dangerous fighter than Namajunas for Aaron. So that's what I think also. I think if Fiore wins, I think the Blanchfield camp should hold out for the champ. If Namajunas wins, I will bet you the Blanchfield camp takes that fight if it's pushed on them. So in this fight, I think Fiore wins, although I'd like Namajunas better. I'll cheer for Rose, but I think Fiore wins.
I'm steering more towards a Fiore win, but I would like Namajunas. I actually like Maino Fiore as well, but Rose is one of my favorite fighters, full stop. So I'm rooting for Rose, but I think Fiore will win.
What would you imagine the odds would be? I'm looking at them, and I'm slightly surprised, although not very surprised.
See, I actually think that Rose is going to be seen as the favorite because she's the more popular fighter, but I'm guessing here, I think more educated, and I don't mean this in a rude way to anyone who casually watches the sport, but I think fight fans will have Fiore as the favorite to win within themselves.
Yeah, so the odds makers do have Fiore as the favorite.
Okay.
But it's less than 2-1. I thought they would even have her more of a favorite. I thought she would be like minus 260, something like this. But she's anywhere from minus 180 to minus 215 at most. So it's just like 1.5 to 1 favorite. And I thought it would be more. But yeah, the bottom line, I'm excited for that fight. Can't wait to see Rose at flyweight. She could look powerful.
Same.
Yeah.
Very intriguing. Very intriguing.
By the way, we skipped Volkan Oezdemir against Bogdan Guskov. That's okay, because no one knows what Guskov's going to do, except for he looks a little like Lionheart. I do think that Benoit Saint Denis and Thiago Moises is going to be a very good fight. So not to spend too much time on that, Thiago Moises is a killer.
Yes, he
17
is.
and 6, 28 years old from Brazil, out of American Top Team. He's been in the UFC for a good minute. For a 28-year-old, he's been in the UFC now.
He's only 28.
Yeah, yep. Moises is
Wow.
only, yep, and he's been in the UFC for 5 years now. He lost to Beneil in his first fight against Beneil. He lost. He beat Kurt Holloway, who just came back and won the Ultimate Fighter. He lost to Damir Ismagulov. Then he went on a good 3-fight win streak, beating Michael Johnson, Bobby Green, Alexander Hernandez. Lost by rear naked choke to Islam, but was really battling Islam pretty well. That fight went deep into the 4th round. Lost to Joel Alvarez. It looked like crap, just the length and the size of Alvarez. I think surprised him. But coming back looking really good with 2 submissions against Christoph Giagos and Melzi Costa. I think he's just a tough guy, and he's fought so many top guys now, and he's got 11 finishes out of 17 wins. So he is a good finisher. At 5'9", 155, 28 years old. The Frenchman, Benoit Saint Denis, is making a quick turnaround. Wow, July, August, September. This will just be 2 months and 1 day. But you know why? After he beat Ismail Bonfim, he said, "I want to be on that Paris." The crappiest French accent ever. Sorry about that. But anyway, that's what it was. He wanted it, or they wanted him on there. One of the two.
Probably a bit of both. Of both.
Yeah, but he dominated in that fight. But a fight is a fight, and a 2-month turnaround. But he's only 27. He's a year younger than Moises, and he's taller, 5'11", 155, 11-1. The only person that got the best of him was Elezu Zaleski dos Santos, a Brazilian who's really talented, and that was that had to be 170. Zaleski is a welterweight. Yeah. So so in his very first fight in the UFC, at 25 years old, they throw him up a weight class against Capoeira, Elezu Zaleski dos Santos, and he goes the distance with him.
Not bad.
But at lightweight, he has been perfect. 3 wins, 3 finishes, 2 by submission, and 1 by TKO. None of the fights even made it to the 3rd round. He is a really tough guy. I just hate that it's such a quick turnaround of 2 months, but at 27 years old, he can handle it. I'm going to guess the odds makers certainly have Moises' favorite, maybe 2-1. Let me take a look. And no, they've got the Frenchman favorite, 1.5-1.
Interesting.
You know, in France, the crowd is going crazy for him, right? If it's a close fight, the judges may go for him.
Yeah.
But man, to me, Denis beats some guys, but nowhere near the guys that Moises has faced. I mean, Nicholas Stolze, Gabriel Miranda, and Ismail Bonfim, even though Bonfim had looked good after his UFC debut. But that's 4 UFC fights only, because he lost the first one to Capoeira. Whereas you have Moises fighting guys like Beneil Dariush, Islam Makhachev.
Yeah, killers. He
didn't beat them, but he was in it with them, and he actually went to the decision with Beneil in his first UFC fight. So, in all honesty, my feeling is that a 2-month turnaround, I would lean Moises here. I would lean Moises. I think
I'm leaning towards Moises. It's just his experience as well.
Yeah, but in front of your home country, you know, Benoit is going to be fighting. This is an exciting fight. I'm looking forward to seeing this. Yeah. Okay, continue on as you were with the commentary on the main event, the British guy dealing with this guy.
So yes, fully expect to see Tom Aspinall in Paris to confront the winner of this fight.
Yes,
I'm going to say it now. I think the winner is going to be Cyril Gane. However, this is a big fight for him. Without mincing my words, he was embarrassed by John Jones, in my opinion.
Indeed.
I think many people expected Jones to win, but not in the fashion it happened. And
no.
He now needs to bounce back if he's got title aspirations. And we all know about his striking, his movement, his footwork. It's all excellent. But one thing we haven't seen from him, one thing he needs to start answering the question of is, if the fight gets ugly, if it stops being pretty, can you handle it? Now, we've seen him against Tuivasa where he got in striking situations and was able to come through with a fantastic win. But when there's grappling involved, he seems to struggle. And if Spivak's smart, he's not going to go out there and try and strike with Cyril Gane. He's going to try and get him up against the fence, close the distance, and try and take him down. Do you think he has any success in that?
Would Spivak have any success in going in to take down Gane? Or
Yeah.
yeah. You know, I think he very well could. He's fighting out of Moldova. He's 6'3". Gane is 6'5". Gane is the older fighter at 33. Spivak is only 28 years old, but he's had like 10 UFC fights. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Indeed. He's on a 3-fight win streak. He only lost to Aspen.
Yeah.
Right? In September of 21. He actually lost to Tybura in his third UFC fight. And then his first UFC fight, he did lose to Walt Harris, who was looking quite good in 2019.
Yeah.
Man, Spivak is a finisher. He's got 14 wins out of his 16 14 finishes out of 16 wins. 7 KOs and 7 submissions. So quite a balanced fighter. Cyril Gane, I think, does have that 1 submission. No, he's actually got 3 submissions, but only 1 was in the UFC. He submitted Dontel Mays by the heel hook. Actually, he did another UFC in his very first UFC fight. He submitted a man named Rafael Pessoa by arm triangle choke. You know what's interesting that I just noticed about Gane is he's got 13 fights. Would you believe that 10 of them are in the UFC?
That's crazy. I didn't realize he fought so many times in the UFC.
Yeah, and that he came to the UFC with a record of 3-0, or as the score of the football games, 3-0, 3-0, I guess you might say, right? So, I don't know.
That's insane, to be honest.
Very odd, very bizarre, isn't it? And he showed up, submitted his first 2 wins were by submission. Submitted a guy named, and funny enough, prior to that, in his first 3 fights, he also had a submission. His very first fight he won in the TKO organization by submission, and that was over in Canada. I'm not sure if that organization is still around. I don't think they are. I think they folded during the pandemic. But nevertheless, he beat Rafael Pessoa, beat Dontel Mays, and then the Tanner Boser fight. That was my first memory of him. And I remember seeing the clips of the Dontel Mays where he won by heel hook. Actually, and then Junior Dos Santos, he stopped him. He kind of embarrassed Jairzinho Rosenstrike. 50-43 on the cards there in the main event. Against Volkov, he was too young, too big, too strong. Derek Lewis, he ended up catching him. And then that Ngannou fight came back and stopped Tuivasa. I mean, the Cyril Gane hate after that loss, so many people thought lost money. I didn't, but I thought he would make that a very close fight.
Yeah.
And he did not. I mean, he just got smoked. He looked like an amateur on the feet there.
The occasion got to him. The occasion definitely got to him.
It did. So this will be different, but he really wants redemption here. And it is in France. All these Frenchmen on the card. I shouldn't say all these. There's only a few. But we didn't look at the undercard, but I'm sure they're littered with the Frenchmen. But Gane has to win here. If Gane loses here, what a reversal of fortune it will be indeed. So I'm going to say that I believe Gane will be about 2-1 favorite here, perhaps a bit more, maybe even 2.5 or 3. And the answer is not even. He's not even a 2-1 favorite here. About 1.5, 1.6 to 1 favorite.
I thought it'd been wider than that. It should be wider than that.
Really, and in France, I really would have. So this is a hard fight to call. I mean, Spivak, I mean, Gon can submit people, but I feel like Gon is submitting people that didn't even really know.
Yeah, what they're
Yeah,
they weren't able to see the setups and the traps. And...
right. Whereas Spivak has a submission over Derek Lewis, and Derek's a strong guy who understands submissions, and that was just this year. He submitted Tai Tuivasa, who is not a jiu-jitsu guy, but certainly recognized submissions. But that's actually most of his. You know what? Almost all of the submissions by Spivak were outside the UFC. Interesting. So this is a weird one. Yeah, I wouldn't bet against the Frenchman in France, but I think that Spivak could make this very close. I mean, the winner of this, what would you feel would be next? It should be probably Aspinall.
Well, yeah.
Well, no, Aspinall should probably get the winner of Jones Stipe.
Well, here's the thing. Without trying to play spoiler, I genuinely believe Stipe and Jones retire after their fight, regardless of the result. If Spivak wins, I still find it hard to rematch Aspinall Spivak because of how Aspinall dispatched of Spivak. But again, that would be me contradicting myself because I still think Max should get another fight at Volkanovski.
Right.
So I think Cyril Gane and Aspinall, if the UFC could do WWE and script the fight, it would be Cyril Gane to win. Aspinall and Cyril Gane have a little face-off, and then they make the fight for the O2 early next year.
There we go. Do the British and the French
winner gets the title, or that could be the fight for the vacant heavyweight title? Because I genuinely believe Jones and Stipe, this is their last fight, and they ride off into the sunset.
That could be. Well, remember, there's the other Sergey in the picture as well, Sergey Pavlovich.
Pavlovich, sorry, yes, yeah. So yeah, the winner of this fight will fight Aspinall, and then the winner of that fight, in my opinion, will fight Sergey Pavlovich.
Right, because I think Sergey may be next in line.
Yeah, he should be.
Yeah, Pavlovich for what happens with Jones. So it's a bit muddled, a bit of a mucked up picture there.
It is.
You know, only our number one fan of this show, King Charles, here in England, would be able to figure that out. King, give me a call and let me know who you feel should be next, and we can announce that on the next program. I know King Charles loves this MMA from London to LA.
He loves it.
This is a favorite show of the royal family. I've heard he sometimes forces the other people that you can't force someone to watch a great show like ours, but I've heard
exactly.
He
encourages them. He encourages
them because he's he's the big MMA fan out of the royal family. Is King Charles.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, nonetheless, I think that and so it'll be interesting to see, but. This is, I think I've already thought of a poll I'm going to put out. And you know what? The good thing is this won't drop immediately, so I can announce it here. But if anyone's thinking of beating me to it, you won't be able to. I will have already put it out prior to this being aired. I'm going to put out a poll that's going to ask how many French fighters win on this card in France. And that's always interesting to see because I would bet you. Let's see if actually you and I can make our picks. Have you and I make our picks really quick, and then we can wrap it up.
Yeah.
Okay. Cledson Rodriguez is a Brazilian. Farid Basharat is from England, so no French fighters in that fight. Ange Lusa is out of the Congo, and he is going against Reese McKee, who is the Irish Skeletor. Reese McKee is so no French in that fight. Interesting. First two fights, no French fighters. And then third fight, would be Nora Cornole, and she is indeed from France. Nora Cornole. Looks like a tough girl, and she is going against Jocelyn Edwards, right? One French fighter there against an American. Then we have Zara Fern dos Santos from Sweden going against, I think, looked like a French fighter. Jacqueline Calvacante, from Portugal. So only one French fighter so far in the first four fights. Taylor Lapillus is from France. Taylor Lapillus. So that's two French fighters so far in the card. Then we have Morgan Charrier, which is
That sounds
3.
French.
Yes, yep. 3 French fighters on the card, and he's going up against a fighter from Italy. So that's 3 French fighters. And then we have Loughran against Gamori. There's no French fighters there because Yanni. No, there is. Yanni
No, yeah, Gamori.
Yeah, Gamori. So that's 4 French fighters. Gamori. Gomez. William
5.
Gomez is French. Yep, that's 5 French fighters. Uzdemir against Gustav. No, neither, because Uzdemir is Swiss. And Gustav is from Russian Uzbekistan. So, and then we have
Benoit.
Benoit is 6, and then Menal is 7, and Cyril is 8. 8 French fighters on the card. And I'll tell you what, you don't have to pick the exact number, but I think I'm going to list it as how many will win. 7 or 8, 5 or 6, 4 to 5, or 3 or less.
I'm going to go in the 4 to 5 category. I think there'll be 5 French winners.
Okay. Man, and I hate to be on the same one with you, but yeah, I'm going to say that 4 to 5, but I'll say 4 French winners.
Oh, just
5, all right.
To make it interesting.
Yes, but kind of remarkably few French fighters. Well, there's 12 fights and 8 French fighters. That does seem a bit few. It seems like in England, when there's 12 fights, you'd have 10 or 11 French fighters there.
Maybe not in the last card, but yeah, in general.
Yeah. But yeah, so Gane Spivak, would you be leaning towards Spivak or Gane winning in this fight?
Gane. I think Gane will go out and put on a clinic. I think he'll either stop him in the 4th or 5th round, or he'll go to decision.
Right. I think that he very well could as well. I'm leaning that way, but it's going to be a scary fight. But I think if Gane loses this fight, his excitement and the buzz around his career will be gone.
Yeah.
And it's funny. Some parts of people in the United States would actually pronounce "gone" as "gone."
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, part of the Midwest, like Minnesota, South Dakota, gone. Everything is like a short, flat O, but the rest of us would say gone. What would you say? Would you say gone?
We say gone as well.
Gone.
Yeah.
But for the Midwesterners, gone would be gone. It would be, interesting card overall. What would you rate it from 1 to 10 in your opinion?
On paper, I'm going to give it a 6. But I think it has the potential to potentially be an 8 or a 9, especially when the French crowd are going to be there as well. They're some of the best fans I've heard.
Yes.
At an event. So.
Yes. Does Aspinall have? If he does end up fighting Gane, it's funny because France is not terribly far away from England, is it?
No, it's not. It's not. On the Eurostar, we get there pretty quick. I've been to France, and you get there quickly.
And is there kind of a camaraderie between the both countries, or is there more of a rivalry?
I wouldn't say there's a rivalry. I wouldn't say there's either, to be honest. I think there's a healthy respect for each country.
And, it seems like people that come from America and other parts of the world love that it's so close because both England and France have such historic landmarks.
Yeah.
Like I would bet you a lot of people that come to visit one would more than likely visit the other.
Yeah, I reckon so.
Do you have a large population of French people living in England, would you say?
A decent amount, to be fair. A decent amount. But a lot of people travel between the two. Some people will even work in France, but still have a home here and maybe stay there during the week, come back in the weekends, and vice versa. So
because it's a bordering country, right?
Yeah. We can get there really quick. Like I went to France a few years back now, and on the Euros, it's a couple of hours. Very comfortable.
The Eurostar, many watching from America won't know. Is that like the subway type of a system? Maybe?
So it's like it's a train that goes underwater.
Underwater?
Yeah.
You're kidding me.
So yeah, they built tunnels underwater, and you can travel.
Wow, we don't have anything like that in the United States.
Yeah, it's brilliant. The Eurostar is excellent.
But are people afraid if something goes wrong and all of a sudden the water can start coming in?
If I'm not mistaken, I've not heard of any mishaps.
Wow, the Eurostar. can you actually see you can see the water as you're going through? Or no, or you're in tunnel.
No, I don't believe so. No, because I think it's a tunnel. You're in a tunnel.
Interesting. Last question: are there more Brits living in France or more Frenchmen living in
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised if there's more Brits living in France.
England? Interesting.
'Cause if I'm not mistaken, a lot of rich people go and live like in the south of France.
Yes, I've heard of that. Would you need passports to go from one to the other?
I think so. Yes, it's complicated with us now because of us not being in the EU anymore and all of that. So when I went, we were in the EU. I think we still brought our passports, but I don't know how strict they were with it.
So,
Whereas now, I imagine they would be now.
and since you're not in the EU, does that mean you no longer use euros?
We don't use euros here at all.
Had you ever?
No, I'd never used it. It's always been pounds.
Interesting. So even though you were briefly in the EU for what, a few years, 5 or 10 years?
No, we'd always been in the EU as far as I could remember. We just came out of the EU, but we've never used euros in the UK.
Interesting. How do people? I know this is a sports show, so we'll wrap.
No.
How do people feel about England not being in the EU? Did anyone care? What difference would it make?
Yeah, well, the cost of living's gone up quite a lot. And apparently that's an effect because of transportation of goods and stuff. Because we're no longer in the EU, so trading prices have gone up, which means the cost of living for us has gone up. So that's a frustration.
That's quite bad.
I think that the main frustration for a lot of people who were wanted to remain in the EU was that there were a lot of lies fed to get people to want to vote for an exit, and then as soon as they went through the exit or went through the vote, it all came out that a lot of the stuff was just overpromised and under-delivered, which
that sucks because it sounds like British people were lied to in essence.
Yeah. But at the same time, without sounding too bad, and I don't really get into politics,
right?
It was very obvious that a lot of the things being promised were just lies, and I just think people were so naive, and that saying, you clamor for something so different that sometimes you forget what you've got in front of you, and I think that was the case here.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, it seems like all around the world, only maybe half, or as you guys would say, half, people take voting seriously.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I would rather have people not vote who don't take it seriously.
Yeah.
And who, but it is what it is. But that sucks. But well, the inflation's hitting us too as well, Nate.
Yeah, it's hitting everyone, unfortunately. Hopefully things start to get a bit better in the next year or so.
I hope so as well, because if not, to refer the main event favorite here, the most of our money is gone now.
Yeah.
It's bad. Anyway, mate. So I think should be an exciting card on paper.
I reckon so as well.
But even though not brilliant on paper, I think they all should fight hard. And I'm excited to see it. And then of course we have the following week after that, which we won't go into, but we've got Izzy against. Let me leave it off on one question. What would you imagine the odds are, or have you looked with Izzy and Sean?
Oh, they're going to be wide for that one. Izzy's going to be a massive favorite.
Yes. So what I'm looking at, and tell me if this is as massive as you expected. Izzy, it looks like, is approximately a bit more than 4-1 favorite. So he's anywhere.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Anywhere from -455 to -500. Strickland anywhere from +300 to +360. So
yeah, that makes sense.
I think Sean may do a bit better than people think. I think
same.
Get completely shut out. Yeah, but I don't think so. I think he's going to be in it, but it's going to be interesting. And they don't, have the. It's funny. It seems like Izzy is now set up with several people that he would have bad blood with, assuming right? Because he really doesn't like Sean, and Sean's a ridiculous thing. Sean, it's so funny. And this is, I hate to say it, this is part of the stupidity. And I love America. I'm as patriotic as anyone, usually more than many. But we don't know a lot of countries. They don't teach us much about countries outside the USA, and we're so far away. But he made this video where he's saying about Izzy, and they show a picture, and Sean says he himself is more of an Australian than Izzy. but Izzy is in New
New
Zealand.
Zealand. Oh, Sean.
And he goes, yeah.
Sean, if you're going to trash talk, you got to get it right.
Yes.
Got to get it right.
And then he said some ludicrous stuff about Izzy being Chinese, you know.
Yeah.
And Sean is a weird guy, man. He's got, you know.
Have you ever interviewed Sean Strickland?
I haven't. You know, one thing that I find is when someone finally gets a persona out there that they're quite outgoing and that they will say, you know, random things, I think they quickly find reporters that they've spoken with before that they're sure they can trust, because everyone wants to speak with Sean, because what he says tends to go viral to an extent.
Yeah.
And everyone wants the opportunity to be involved with that. And not only that, I would imagine some journalists would deliberately provoke him and try to push him into saying bizarre things. And in which case, you know, off of a video interview, things can often get misquoted. So Sean's, you know, might worry if someone else says something bizarre in the midst of a back and forth, it might sound like Sean said it, and then there can be some real ramifications. And Sam, it's unfortunate, because I would love the chance to speak with him. And you know me, just like I know you, we have integrity. We wouldn't say anything to try to get Sean in trouble. But I'm going to try. But yeah, it seems like once they become a quite outgoing, controversial personality, as with Colby Covington, they pretty much closed the gate as far as allowing interviews. Quite unfortunate, you know. But
it's a shame.
I see the reason.
Yeah. Well, people, if you've enjoyed watching, please do smash the like button. If you haven't, well, I don't know why you wouldn't. It's a great show, even if I must say so myself. We are going to be back next week after the UFC Paris card and to preview UFC 293. If you haven't already, make sure you also subscribe to the channel as well for this weekly show. Colin, can you let the people know where they can find you and support you?
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Callum. I appreciate it. You know, MMA Power Hour, we have a tremendous archive of video content for nearly 7 years with some of the biggest stars in the sport of UFC, as well as some big past stars in boxing, and actually a movie star or two as well. Check out MMA Power Hour on Facebook. We put a lot of our content there. We put it up at YouTube as an afterthought. Quite foolish of us looking back on it, but that was my partner's call on that, and nevertheless, it is what it is. Wish we would have focused on YouTube, but yeah, we're out there. We do a podcast. We do our Twitter Spaces MMA, and I'm doing it pretty much myself now for a bit. And so MMA Power Hour is me on Twitter Spaces. I'll do some random interviews here and there for UFE Ultimate Fan Experience. And but yes, I love this show, this video show here with Callum is my passion. Chris Allen, by the way, if I could announce, he's gonna be more of a correspondent now. He's dealing with a lot of things with his family, and was not able to make it every week. But we will definitely keep him as a correspondent here. Yes, and you know, and I still say my mates there should have some fish and chips there at some point. I'm sure they will.
Definitely one of the founding fathers of this show.
Yes,
always going to have space for Chris.
Good, yes, indeed, he's a great guy. As are you.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my thought, and you know, I'm always happy to continue this Mad Dogs and Englishmen tour with me being the Mad Dog, the brilliant Englishman, as I like to say, Callum Sanderson, the wrestling of Cael Sanderson, the striking of a young Anderson Silva, the charisma of your favorite moving star, whoever made that be, and one of the best upcoming British journalists in the entire United Kingdom, if I may say so.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Well, people, on that note, thank you all for watching. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below with regards to UFC Paris. Until we see you next time, have a great week. Take care.
Peace. Take care.